But it's the feeling that you are thinking that makes you feel I am.
Massage.
And the cognitive
You call message.
I've always been puzzled to know why is this so subjective, because thinking, after all, is very objective.
Friend Noam Chomsky, the linguist, is of the opinion that language exists as a form of brain print.
The point is, the Western man thinks that the real changes take place up here in his noodle, and the environment has nothing to do with it. Now, this is Cartesian, a sort of idea of subjectivity. You have a more intensive feeling of thinking when you doubt something than when you already agree with it, you see. So doubting is a way of having an even more subjective experience.
Chomsky, the linguist, of the opinion that language exists as a form of brain print. Everybody has language innate in him. Otherwise, we'd never learn to talk. But he is totally a visual man who doesn't know that the resonant interval is a very, very quick way of learning.
KANTnHEGEL have had such a profound influence on the European mind that if you don't start with them, you never get on into the other thing. I find KANTnHEGEL painful and barren and sterile. Non-stop verbal monsters. The absolute verbal diarrhea of those people has covered Europe a mile deep with ordure. I think it's an absolute disaster for Europe, those people. And we're very lucky the pragmatism of the English tradition would have nothing to do with KANTnHEGEL.
For example, a small child learns by hearing his tongue, not by looking at the language. And having heard a few scraps of English repeated in different situations around the home or around the community, he fills in the rest of the gaps resonantly very quickly.
That's very good, actually.
Well, it's also...
I mean, it's interesting to me that he was going to write, I doubt, therefore I am.
Oh yeah, that was his, well, you see, this doubt is in the center of his philosophy, the Cartesian doubt.
Absolutely. I mean, that's also the key to his knowledge.
Now this, by the way, this Western view that man's behavior is independent of his environment is, again, visual. And only a highly visual and highly literate man could ever have such a thought. In other words, it began with the Greeks, but is now ended. We now understand environmentalism as being control of us as well. If Hegelians were a little more intelligent, I might accept even more. But
I'm an investigator.
Finnegan's Wake, pop culture and high culture. Finnegan's Wake, pop culture and high culture. Finnegan's Wake.
When you say A, B, C, D, abracadabra is phonemic. A, B, C, D is morphemic. Has meaning. The ABCs, he knows his ABCs is a meaningful statement.
see, they were phonemes.
Pop culture and high culture.
This reminds me of the scene in Annie Hall.
When you use phonemes,
Reading and
translate the acoustic into the visual.
you have
When you're dealing with signs that are meaningless, you can take anything from any sphere and translate it into that meaningless, neutral category.
completely misconstrued everything I've said.
This is not true of any other alphabet. You cannot translate anything into Chinese.
And I agree with, if I had said that, I would agree with you.
Always has, always will. That's the meaning of the word.
The phonetic alphabet that permits
Age is
translation of everything into itself. That is why then you turn that outward and you get the visual society is totally aggressive,
clothing. When you put
politically aggressive, and says all of you people have got to become like us. This is the only culture in the history of the world that ever tried to change everybody into itself.
when you put new clothing
And
around
it's called civilization.
But the abracadabra is not.
clothing around anybody,
When the separation of meaning
look at
from the visual came into play, it clicked. Western man wide open. For the first time in history, the visual part of man came alive in isolation from the rest of man. But it was really phonetically in which you were able to put into these meaningless forms the oral tradition. Homer could then be put down visually after centuries of being sung. I explore to be different.
Yeah.
Instead of explaining, I explore.
Casting his perils before swings.
You know,